I was standing in the kitchen, staring at my phone like an idiot, pretending I wasn't waiting for it to buzz. It was my 57th birthday, and just like every year before it, nothing. No texts, no calls, no, "Hey, let's grab dinner." Not from my folks, not from my sister. Not even one of those lazy Facebook posts people throw up out of obligation. It was dead quiet. I didn't remind anyone. I'd made that decision weeks ago. I wanted to know, flat out, if they'd remember on their own. They didn't. My name's Mark. I'm 57 years old. I live just outside of Madison, Wisconsin. And yeah, this isn't new. My sister Emily's been the star since we were kids. Everything was always about her. She could sneeze and it'd make the holiday newsletter. Me? I was just the one who didn't make a fuss. But this time, something snapped. Not in a loud, screaming way, just a firm, final click. I stopped waiting. Thing is, this year, I'd actually done something worth celebrating. 2 months earlier, I landed the biggest deal in my company's history. 2 of our top sales reps had quit, and the account should have been dead in the water. I pulled it back from the grave. My boss handed me a $65,000 bonus, called me a magician. I didn't tell my family, not a word. Instead, I went online and found something that had been sitting in the back of my mind for years. A little 2-bedroom cabin on a lake up north. Real old school, wood everywhere, private pier, just enough room to breathe. I drove up, walked the property, and said screw it. Put the down payment down the same day. Something for me. Couple days later, I posted a picture on Facebook, just one. The lake in the background, the dock stretching out, keys in my hand, caption, "Finally got the weekend place I've been dreaming about." Quick note, before we go further, share which city or country you're watching from. An hour later, my phone lit up like it owed somebody money. Texts, calls, Facebook messages, even a voicemail from my mom, who hasn't called me first in years. Not a single happy birthday, not one. But suddenly everyone had something to say. Emily's comment popped up first. "Wait, you bought a cabin?" I stared at the screen, tossed the phone on the counter, and poured myself a bourbon. I didn't touch my phone again that night. Instead, I sat on the couch with the lights off and just let myself remember, really remember, how I got here. Because this wasn't just about a birthday. It was about every damn year leading up to it. I grew up in St. Charles, Missouri, quiet street, big house, trimmed hedges, the whole catalog family thing. Dad was a real estate attorney with a country club membership and a temper he kept tucked just beneath the surface. Mom wore pearls to the grocery store and ran charity auctions like she was running for office. Everything had to look good from the outside. And then there was Emily, my little sister. 3 years younger, louder, prettier, and somehow the center of gravity in every single room we were ever in. She could fart in a wine glass, and they'd call it perfume. I'm not even being funny. Once at Thanksgiving, she told a story about getting rear-ended in traffic, and Dad actually clapped at the punchline. I was sitting right there. It wasn't that they hated me. I don't think it was that dramatic. It was just, I didn't shine, I didn't sparkle, I didn't need to be rescued or celebrated or chased after. So, they didn't. When I got a full ride to Mizzou, Dad looked up from his paper and said, "That's nice, Mark, good job." Then he turned the page. When Emily landed a marketing internship, unpaid mind you, at some startup that folded 6 months later, Mom planned a dinner party, real china, flowers, neighbors invited and everything. My birthdays were a running joke. One year they forgot completely and gave me a card 2 weeks later that still had the Hallmark price tag on it. Another year, I got a used copy of a book I'd already read, with someone else's name written inside the front cover. When I turned 13, they straight up left town, drove to Denver for Emily's ballet showcase. No note, no cake. I came home from school to a cold house and a fridge full of nothing. When I brought it up later, Mom said, "You're so independent, sweetie. We didn't think you'd mind." I nodded like I understood. I didn't. I just learned not to bring things up. By the time I turned 18, they stopped pretending. No calls, no gifts. I bought my own cake that year. One of those frozen ones from the grocery store with clumpy icing and too much food coloring. I ate the whole thing over 2 days in my dorm room and didn't tell a soul. Still, I kept hoping it would shift, that if I worked hard enough, got good grades, became someone worth bragging about, they'd notice. That maybe once Emily was grown and done soaking up all the attention, they'd have a little left for me. It never happened. Even when I came home from college with a job already lined up, they barely asked about it. Emily was dating some hedge fund guy at the time, and all dinner conversation was about whether he might propose. She ended up dumping him a week later, but that night, she was the queen of the damn castle. I'd be lying if I said it didn't hurt, but I buried it. That's what I'd learned to do. Keep quiet, don't expect much. Be the guy who doesn't make a fuss. Still, every year, some small part of me hoped they'd change. That maybe this time someone would call, that they'd remember without a Facebook notification or a reminder from Emily. And every year, they proved me right not to expect it. That was the real reason I didn't tell them about the bonus. Not because I wanted to surprise them, because I already knew they wouldn't care. They only noticed once I bought something they couldn't ignore. By the time the cabin photos hit Facebook, I'd already lived through decades of getting passed over. That wasn't new. It started right after college and just never let up. I graduated from Mizzou with honors, top 10% of my class, business degree in hand, job lined up before I walked the stage. I sent a group text the morning of graduation to remind them of the time and where to park. They didn't come. Emily had food poisoning. Dad said they didn't want to leave her alone, even though she was 21 and living with her boyfriend. Mom sent me a card a week later with $20 inside. I laughed out loud when I opened it. $20. I'd just landed a full-time job at a construction supply company, and she sent me what I used to get in 6th grade. The job was nothing glamorous. Started out working the counter, answering phones, moving pipe fittings, helping contractors find what they needed. I didn't complain. I was good at it. Showed up early, stayed late, learned the system better than most of the managers. After 2 years, they moved me into sales. 5 years after that, I was managing the entire regional territory. No calls, no dinners, not even a text saying, "Good job." At 29, I got married. Her name was Rachel. Sweet, steady, made me feel like I wasn't invisible. When we started planning the wedding, I figured maybe, just maybe, this would be a moment they'd show up for. They did. Sort of. Dad pulled me aside one day and said, "Let's keep it simple, yeah? We just did Emily's destination wedding in Italy last year, and we're still catching up financially." I remember standing there, blinking. I hadn't asked them to pay for anything, not a dime. But now I was being told to scale down, make it less of a thing, because my sister had already maxed out the spotlight quota for the decade. So we did it small. Courthouse ceremony, backyard reception. We grilled burgers. Rachel's parents brought pies. My parents left after an hour because Emily had a headache. I should have been used to it by then, but that one stung. Fast forward to my 40th. Family cookout in July. I mentioned it in passing. Literally just said, "Crazy I'm 40 today." Nobody blinked, not even a sarcastic "feeling old yet?" Nothing. 2 months later, they threw a full backyard bash for Emily's 36th. Catered barbecue, party tent, big, "Happy Birthday, Emily." Banners strung between 2 trees. I showed up late, stayed 20 minutes, left without saying goodbye. The message had been clear for a long time, but that day it finally stuck. I didn't matter unless I could somehow reflect her light. And I was done standing in the shadow. Still, I played the game. I kept showing up. Christmas, birthdays, Mother's Day brunches. I brought wine, cleared plates, nodded through stories about Emily's latest clients and her kids' milestones. I stopped mentioning mine. At 50, I got promoted to regional manager, full team under me, company car, stock options, the whole deal. I thought about hosting a dinner, just inviting family out for a steak or something low-key. Then I got the invite to Emily's baby shower for her 2nd kid, same weekend. I didn't even try to reschedule. I knew how that would go. Mom texted me, "Hope you understand. We'd love to come celebrate you, but this is such a special time for Emily." I didn't respond. That's when I stopped telling them anything. Promotions, raises, trips I took, awards from work. All of it stayed with me. I'd come to peace with the fact that I could build a whole life and they'd still treat me like a placeholder. And then the bonus landed. 65 grand dropped into my account like a middle finger from the universe saying, "Do something for you, finally." I didn't even go looking for it. The listing showed up in a text from a buddy at work, Brent, who said, "This looks like your kind of place." No context, just a link. It was a 2-bedroom cabin, 2 hours north, tucked just outside Tomahawk, Wisconsin. Wood-paneled, old-school charm, green tin roof that had seen better decades. Private dock, thick tree line on both sides, lake glass, still in the pictures. It looked like the kind of place you'd see on a postcard from 1975, and I couldn't stop staring at it. The bonus hit my account the first week of March. I saw the number, closed my laptop, and drove up that Saturday. Snow still on the ground, lake frozen over, but I could feel it, the quiet, the way the wind moved through the trees. It felt like a place that didn't need me to prove anything. The place was a mess inside. Cabinets were that nasty yellow every rental had back in the 80s. One of the windows in the back room was cracked and covered in duct tape. The roof had some patches that looked suspicious, but I walked it anyway, floor to ceiling, ran my hand along the railings, stood on the dock with my hands in my jacket pockets, breathing cold air and picturing July. I signed the offer the next day, full price, no haggling, no inspection. I didn't care. I didn't need perfect. I needed mine. That Friday, I loaded up the truck, air mattress, toolbox, old blue cooler with a busted latch, bag of groceries, folding chair, space heater, and drove straight there after work. Got in just before dark, cranked the heater, cracked a beer, and laid flat on the floor like I was 20 again. I didn't sleep much that night, not because I was uncomfortable, but because I felt still. For the first time in a long time, it didn't feel like I had to be anywhere else. I wasn't waiting for someone to call or notice or ask me what was next. There wasn't a clock ticking over my head. Next morning, I took a few photos. Just casual ones, sunlight on the dock, the keys in my hand, the cabin's front porch with a fresh layer of snow on the steps. I posted one on Facebook. Caption, weekend project. Finally got my place by the water. 10 minutes later, Emily commented, "Wait, you bought a cabin?" I didn't reply. Another 5 minutes, my phone rang. Mom. I let it go to voicemail. Then a text from Dad. "Where did you get that kind of money?" I stared at it for a second, thumb hovering, then locked the screen and tossed the phone in the cooler. They didn't ask how I was, or if I was happy, or what the place meant to me. Just straight to money, like it was a scandal, like I had to be hiding something. That afternoon, I patched a leaky pipe under the kitchen sink, cleaned out the cabinets, took down a broken ceiling fan, and replaced a few floorboards near the entry. Nothing big, but every nail I hammered, every screw I twisted, felt like pulling something buried out of my chest. I built a fire in the pit out back that night, cooked a frozen steak in a cast iron pan, and sat on the porch eating straight from the skillet, staring out at the lake. My phone buzzed every 15 minutes. Notifications, missed calls, more comments. By Monday morning, the family group chat looked like it had been set on fire. Text after text rolled in. "Mom, why wouldn't you say something?" Emily. "Mark, seriously, you bought a cabin?" Dad. "Why keep it a secret? You made a big financial decision without even running it by us." I didn't respond. They kept going. Emily again. "You've never done anything like this. We just want to make sure you're okay." Mom. "It's a lot of money, Mark. We're just concerned you're being impulsive." Impulsive? I'd been sidelined for 57 damn years. If anything, I waited too long. Midweek, Emily texted me privately. "I know things have felt unbalanced, but blindsiding us like this doesn't help." Didn't help what exactly? Their image. Their belief that I was still quietly sitting in the background, waiting for a turn that never came. Then came the invitation to Dad's birthday dinner. Emily was hosting. Mom called to tell me it would mean a lot to your father if you came. Translation, show up, be normal, don't mention the cabin. I almost said no. Almost. But something in me snapped back. Fine, I'd go, I'd show up. And I'd say exactly what needed to be said. Dinner was Saturday night. Emily's place, of course. Her perfect 2-story colonial in West County. The whole house smelled like garlic and candles. Everyone was already seated when I walked in. Emily in a new dress, Mom fussing over the table, Dad sipping scotch and looking like the man of the hour. Emily smiled tight. "Hey, you made it." I nodded and hung my coat. Would have been rude not to. We all sat. Appetizers came out. Wine was poured. Everyone danced around it for a while. Weather, the Cardinals, some story about Emily's youngest learning to tie her shoes. Then Dad cleared his throat. "You sure everything's okay, son?" I met his eyes. "Why wouldn't it be?" "Well," he said slowly, "just seems sudden. The cabin. It's a big leap." Mom chimed in without looking up. That money could have gone toward a more practical home, or a retirement investment. I set down my fork. It was bonus money, 65 grand, from work. They all paused. Emily blinked. Wait, you got a bonus? From where? I looked at her flat. My job, same one I've had for over 30 years. Landed the national contract after 2 senior reps quit. My boss called it a miracle. Dad raised his eyebrows. National? You never said anything. No, I didn't. Mom dabbed her mouth. Still, a cabin seems a bit impulsive. You mean because it didn't involve Emily? I said. The table froze. I've hit milestones my whole life, I continued. Graduated with honors, promoted, married, bought a house. Nobody noticed. But the second I post one photo of something I bought for me, suddenly you all care. Emily's voice came out small. You never made a big deal about your stuff, I snapped. Maybe because you all never acted like it mattered. Silence. I could hear the tick of Emily's wall clock in the next room. Nobody moved. Dad finally said, That's not fair. No, what's not fair is watching you throw a party for her unpaid internship and not showing up to my wedding because your feet hurt. What's not fair is being told to keep things small, quiet, appropriate, while she gets whatever the hell she wants, no matter the cost. Emily looked down at her lap. Mom stared at her wine. I didn't tell you about the bonus, I said, because I didn't want your opinion. I didn't want you to make it about how I should be more practical, or how it's not the right time, or how I should have talked to Emily first so she could help plan. No one said a word. I pushed back from the table. Thanks for dinner, I said. Happy birthday, Dad. Then I grabbed my coat, walked out the door, and didn't look back. The next morning, I woke up to a 10-paragraph email from Mom. It started with, "We're sorry you feel that way," and ended with, "But this family has always been there for you." I didn't bother replying. By Thursday, the group chat was buzzing again. Emily's 40th was coming up in 3 months. Big party in the works. She wanted to rent a winery, do a catered dinner, maybe a photo slideshow. I scrolled through the texts, not surprised in the slightest to see Mom was already organizing the menu, and Dad was researching wine packages. Then came the kicker. Emily, Mark, can you help coordinate the invitations? You're so good with the practical stuff. That was it. I texted back, I'm not doing this. I won't be involved in the planning. 3 minutes later, Dad called. You're seriously not helping with your sister's 40th? He asked, like I'd said I was skipping someone's funeral. I'll be at the cabin, I said flat. He exhaled hard into the phone. You're being selfish. Funny, I said. Family only seems to come first when it's her family. There was a pause. That's not fair, he muttered. No, I said. What's not fair is being expected to clap every time Emily sneezes while nobody remembers when I turn 40 or 50 or graduate college or get married or land a major contract. That's not true. You can't even fake it anymore, Dad. I'm not your placeholder. I'm done. I ended the call before he could respond. That weekend, I packed the truck and drove up to the cabin. It was still cold, but the snow had mostly melted. The air smelled like wet pine and thawing earth. I walked through the door, dropped my bag, and just stood there for a minute. No voices, no corrections, no sideways glances, just peace. The pipe under the kitchen sink had started leaking again. I grabbed my wrench and tightened the fitting until it stopped, re-caulked around the base just to be sure. Then I grilled a steak out back, wrapped in foil, cooked straight on the coals, sat on the porch, boots up, beer in hand. That night, I slept better than I had in years. No tossing, no dreams, just solid, dead-out sleep. The kind you get when your body finally stops bracing for impact. Midweek, Emily texted, "Didn't realize how much we overlooked you. I'm sorry." I stared at it a long time. Simple. No fluff, no qualifiers. But I didn't write back. I wasn't mad. I just didn't need to. The silence felt better than any apology. After that weekend, the cabin became my rhythm. Every other Friday, I packed up the truck, filled the cooler, tossed in whatever tools I thought I might need, and made the drive north. No calls, no agenda, just me and the road. About a month in, I met Dan. He was hauling a generator across his yard, muttering like it owed him money. Looked to be late 60s, big hands, denim over everything. I offered to help, and next thing I knew, we were talking dock designs over 2 Coors Lights and a bag of jerky. Turned out he was a retired lineman, handy as hell. Didn't talk much unless he had something worth saying, which frankly was a breath of fresh air. The old dock was falling apart, barely safe to walk on. We tore it out, cut fresh boards, stained them ourselves, and by the end of the weekend, I had a brand new dock strong enough to park a truck on. We didn't celebrate, just nodded, shook hands, and cracked another beer. Inside the cabin, I started chipping away. Repainted the kitchen, ripped out those god-awful yellow cabinets, and put in clean pine shelves I built from scratch. Took the tiny back bedroom and turned it into a den. Bookshelves on one wall, small leather chair, reading lamp, radio, no TV. Didn't need one. Every upgrade was something I did with my own hands. Nothing flashy, just real. One Saturday evening, I finished the deck. Pressure-treated boards, wide enough for chairs and a little table. Stood back, took a photo as the sun dipped behind the trees, and posted it. Slow build, but getting there. 2 hours later, Mom commented, "Wish you'd invite us sometime." I read it twice, locked my phone, and left it on the kitchen counter. Didn't even give it the dignity of a response. At work, things kept moving. Sales were steady. The regional numbers looked good. One morning, my boss called me into his office and offered me a seat at the senior team table. No balloons, no plaque, just a quiet, "You've earned this." I nodded, shook his hand, and went back to work. Didn't tell my family, didn't need to. Couple weekends later, I invited my best buddy Matt up to the cabin. We'd been friends since high school, real salt-of-the-earth guy. Still drove the same beat-up Chevy, still called me dumbass like we were 16. He stepped out of the truck, looked around, and gave this slow grin. Walked the deck, peeked inside, took it all in. "This is you, man," he said. "Quiet, solid, no bullshit." That hit harder than anything I'd ever heard. Not because it was deep, but because it was true, and because no one in my family had ever said anything close. Matt left Sunday night, and I already knew I wouldn't be going back to work the next week. My 58th birthday was coming up Tuesday. I didn't tell anyone, not the team, not the group chat, not even Brent. I just put in for PTO, packed the truck with a week's worth of quiet, and pointed the wheels north. Steaks, bourbon. A new book I'd been meaning to read since spring. That was the plan. No streamers, no group texts, no watching other people get credit for remembering I existed. I pulled into the drive late Monday afternoon, light rain tapping the windshield, the kind of cool air that meant fall was settling in for real. I unloaded in 10 minutes flat, then just stood out by the dock, breathing in the quiet. Tuesday morning, I woke up at 6. No alarm. The sky was just starting to glow over the tree line. I got dressed, threw on a hoodie, and stepped outside with a mug of coffee. The lake was calm, glass still, not a ripple. The kind of silence you don't realize you've been starving for until you finally taste it. I set up the grill and cooked breakfast outside. Bacon, eggs, hash browns, and foil. Drank the rest of the coffee straight from the pot. No one asked how old I was. No one made a joke about my hairline. Nobody handed me a gift and looked disappointed when I didn't pretend to love it. Just me and the birds and the sound of bacon popping. After breakfast, I walked to the edge of the dock and snapped a photo. Coffee mug in one hand, sun just peeking over the lake, the stillness wrapping around everything. Posted it with a simple caption, "Another year older, finally doing it my way." I didn't check the comments, didn't care. Around noon, I cracked open the bourbon and sat in the den with my feet up, book in my lap. I only made it 10 pages before falling asleep in the chair like an old man. Best nap I'd had in months. That evening, I grilled a steak, threw on some corn and baked beans for good measure, ate out on the porch as the sky turned purple and the air got cold enough for a flannel, poured one last bourbon, and watched the stars come out. Sometime around 9, my phone buzzed. One text. "Emily, happy birthday. Hope you're celebrating somewhere that matters to you." I stared at it a while. Not because it was emotional or dramatic or some kind of grand gesture. It wasn't. But it was enough. No pressure, no guilt. Just a sentence that didn't make it about her. I didn't reply. I didn't need to. I finished my drink, added another log to the fire pit, and sat out there until the flames burned low and the crickets were the only sound left. That was the birthday I finally stopped waiting. The first snow had already come and gone when I finally texted Emily. "You free next weekend? Just you, no one else." She replied a few hours later, "I'll make it work. Should I bring anything?" "Whatever you'd want to have if we were just two adults sitting on a porch." She showed up late Friday afternoon. Burgundy SUV, fresh haircut, jeans, and a coat that probably cost more than my whole kitchen remodel. But she looked nervous, like she wasn't sure I'd even open the door. I did. She handed me a bottle of wine and a Tupperware with pie inside. Apple, homemade, she said, and not from a kit, actual crust. I cracked a small smile. Didn't know you baked. Learned during quarantine. I used to burn toast, remember? Vividly. We didn't say much that night, just sat on the porch under the heat lamp, watching the lake disappear into the dark. I made us chili. She insisted on doing the dishes. Next morning, we drank coffee outside, wrapped in blankets. She kept glancing over at me like she was trying to work up the courage. Finally, she said, "I've been thinking a lot about what you said." I didn't answer right away. She pushed forward. "At Dad's birthday, when you said no one ever acted like your stuff mattered." Still, I waited. She looked down at her mug. I didn't realize how much of it I missed, or ignored. I nodded once. "That's kind of the point." "What does this place mean to you?" she asked, glancing out over the lake. "It's the only place where no one talks over me." That landed. I could see it in her shoulders. She didn't try to justify it. She didn't defend them. She just blinked hard and looked away. After a while, she said, "I see it now, the pattern, the way they center me, always have, and how you made it easy just by not asking for anything." "Yeah, well," I said, "I stopped thinking it would change a long time ago." "They'll probably never change," she admitted. "I don't need them to," I said. "I'm good here." We sat in silence again. Not awkward, just settled. She pulled the blanket tighter around her and leaned back in the chair like she could finally exhale. "I'd like to come up again," she said after a while. "Next time, bring the kids. I think they get a kick out of the dock." I sipped my coffee. "As long as they know it's not a vacation house, it's not for show." "I know," she said. "That's what makes it work." We didn't hug when she left. Just a quick goodbye, a nod, and a quiet kind of peace between us. It wasn't everything, but it was enough. Winter came and went. So did spring. I stayed steady. It's been a year since I bought the cabin. I've replaced every window with my own 2 hands, stained the deck twice, built a fire pit out back with fieldstone I hauled up from the hardware store one weekend. Nothing fancy, just solid. Emily visits now and then, never unannounced. She brings pie or beer and helps sweep the porch like it's her job. The kids came up once, caught bluegill, tracked mud everywhere, left me a mess of footprints I didn't bother cleaning for a week. I didn't mind. Mom still texts sometimes, usually after I post a photo. The lake looks lovely. Maybe we could come up this fall? I don't say yes. I don't say no. I just leave it there, floating. Dad hasn't mentioned the cabin once since that dinner. Not a word. I've stopped expecting anything from either of them. They might change, they might not. Doesn't matter. I'm not building my life around their attention anymore. This place, the porch, the tools in the shed, the dock I restained last weekend, it's mine. Paid for with my work, lived in on my own time, not borrowed from anyone else's calendar. No one to outshine me here, no spotlight to chase. Every Saturday morning, I make coffee the old way, percolator on the stovetop, carry it out to the deck, and sit in the same chair facing the lake. Sometimes it's misty, sometimes crisp and bright. Doesn't matter. I sit there, quiet, steady, and remind myself, they didn't celebrate you, so you did. That's enough. And for anyone out there feeling like the second string in your own family, buy the damn cabin. You don't need permission to matter. Sometimes the best party is the one you throw for yourself.